From a nitrogen management standpoint and trying to figure out, man, how do I manage the carbon penalty? The question you have to ask yourself is, how are you doing now? How many people in here fight yellow corn in the spring? Okay, you're not getting the carbon penalty paid. That's pretty simple. If your corn's turning yellow, you're not managing the carbon penalty. But then there's going to be another layer of you that is probably paying a carbon penalty, but it's in a corn-soybean rotation or a corn-wheat rotation, where the penalty is enough that it's keeping corn pale, maybe off green, and you wouldn't know that it's pale unless you add more nitrogen to the field. So one of the ways that we come up with, the recommendations that we come up with here, is to go out there and say, okay, in the spring of the year, I'm going to surface apply 30 pounds, 60 pounds, 90 pounds, 120 pounds, and do it in a field that you can see, maybe one right out from your picture window. And you watch that field in the spring, and if 30 pounds is greener than 0, what's it telling you? We need more nitrogen than 0. If 60 is greener than 30, we need more than 30. Eventually there's going to be a sweet spot in there where you can't tell the corn getting any greener as you go up in nitrogen, and now you've met the carbon penalty. And that's a little bit different because that's how we manage bean stubble, for instance, that's rotating. Corn turning yellow, that's a no-brainer. She's in trouble. And then how much nitrogen is it going to keep to get it from not being yellow? Those strips, not too scientific, but it's a scenario where is that point where you visually can't see the difference, that tells you you paid the carbon penalty. And you can do that on your own farm, in your own situation, and come up with your own numbers to say, I think it takes this much to pay the carbon penalty. Here in Illinois, we have soils that they're just super at releasing nitrogen. They can produce 250 bushel corn on 100 pounds of nitrogen. But the problem is we still got to pay the carbon penalty. If we don't put some nitrogen on the front end, they're going to look like crap. So it's a scenario where, take it home and say, okay, we're going to challenge this, see what Perry knows what he's talking about. Let's go out here and put some different strips of nitrogen out where we can watch it and see how it operates in the beginning of the year. Then if you're in a sand, if you're in a cucumber rotation, or you're in cover crops, you realize how it works. Take a cover crop this tall, kill it and plant into it is one thing. Kill it and incorporate it. Now you've upped the ante. Now we got a problem because we got to decompose all this carbon that we incorporated. So I can't pick out every scenario that's in here, but just a simple plot on your own farm, I think you'd be amazed at what you'd learn.
Tell us a little bit based on, do you get a lot of questions out there in the pit? I know one guy asked me, is she making this up? I assured him you were not making this up. But give us a little insight into the things that people ask you over and over and over again.
Yeah, we had a lot of interaction in my groups. I think the first group I got down in the soil pit and I didn't know if they're going to let me back out. They're asking so many questions, so that was a good thing. And I think the overall take home really on this tillage side of things is I hope that we gave you guys some tools today that you have the confidence and comfort to be able to actually go home and really analyze your own tillage system. Because there's a lot of people that are out there doing tillage, and when you ask the question why, well that's how someone else did, or that's what works in our area. And until we really investigate what's happening underground and dig some soil pits and evaluate some roots, I think it's pretty hard to answer that question. I hope that we gave you enough information today to know how to identify these crown roots and how important those first 3 sets of crown roots are for establishing yield, that you can go out and dig, evaluate those, see where they're at, and also really understand what we mean by water movement and moisture lines. We went through a lot of examples today trying to explain how detrimental a shallow layer can be when we're trying to get rid of water early in the spring and early in the season. And also as we get these other layers in the soil and it's late in July and August and we want to be able to pull water up, when we have layers out there, we're not going to be able to be effective doing that. So I hope we're able to also get that point across. And I think we drove this home enough as far as whatever we do with our tillage system, we cannot sacrifice the ear count. And we'd rather have a perfect ear count with a layer under there versus a poor ear count with no layers, because it all still has to come back to that ear count. I hope we're able to drive that home to you today out in those pits and looking at the different tillage systems. But really, I think if you can get out and look at your own system, see what works for you, try some different things. You know, Ken's talking about some plots from a nitrogen perspective. You know, a lot of people come up and ask me, you know, is that field cultivator really causing me problems, or is that disc really doing damage? You know, try some different things in your fields and see if it makes a difference or not.
Okay, Isaac, I know when I was listening in on you, you couldn't even get to the end of your presentation without getting questions. So was there any commonality through that?
Yeah, I definitely think that the most common concept we see with a lot of our farmers is they have 3, 5, 7 years worth of yield data, and then they have no clue how to put it all together or what to do with it. And to be able to get our maps into a situation where we can start to use those in an intensive management type process, we have to make sure that we're calibrated for precision. And that's probably the hardest thing to get across is we may give up accuracy in some points, but we need that precision and that spatial variability. Do whatever you can to increase your spatial variability. Don't worry so much about bushels in the actual bin. And getting a good calibration with good spatial variability once will be a whole lot better than recalibrating every 2, 3, 4 days because your calibration becomes outdated or your error jumps so much. So if we can focus on that good spatial variability, that calibration will last you a lot longer into the season and will do you a lot more.